Hey guys, tonight we're creeping into a creaking medieval mill where dusty secrets stick to your skin like flour paste. Picture sagging timbers groaning under centuries of use, their wooden bones shifting with the night's chill. Lantern light paints the air gold each mote of dust, a tiny firefly caught mid-dance. You inhale stale oats and damp stone, a scent historians say plagued every baker from Pompeii to Paris. Reality check. If this were an actual 14th century workspace, you'd already be sneezing your lungs out. Medieval asthma rates were no joke. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment too. Where are you watching from? And what's crawling through your walls right now? For me, just a suspicious spider judging my life choices from the ceiling. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your boots scuff worn floorboards as you slip past the mill's gaping maw. Its water wheel silent now, clawed with ice. Moonlight spills through cracked shutters like liquid silver, pooling around sacks of barley stacked crooked as a drunkard's grin. That faint grinding noise, not ghosts, just the building settling into itself. Back in the day, mills doubled as tax collection hubs. Kings demanded their cut in flour, not coin. You'd pay whether your crops thrived or withered. Talk about a raw deal. A draft snakes down your collar. Blame the cracked window near the rafters. Peasants once plugged such gaps with moss and pig fat, medieval DIY at its stickiest. You trail fingertips along the central pillar its gouges, marking decades of axe blades, sharpened in haste. Ever wonder why old mills reek of iron? Turns out some millwrights buried horse skulls under the foundation to ward off grain demons. No pressure, but your left shoe's currently crushing a spot where 12 hooves might have moldered. Sleep tight. The lantern gutters, shadows leap like jesters on the walls. You freeze as a mouse skitters over your foot, its tiny nails clicking like a pocket watch. Over in York, archaeologists found a mill cat mummy curled beside a sack of rye, its final nap interrupted after 700 years. Historians still argue whether medieval bakers hallucinated from ergot-laced bread or just blamed the devil for their lousy recipe skills. You lean against the quernstone, its surface scarred like an old warrior's cheek. Wind rams the eastern wall. The whole structure shudders. Odd fact, the world's oldest working mill still grinds flour in England, its stones turning since the Doomsday Book was penned. Your breath fogs the air, each exhale a ghostly mimic of the miller's last wheeze. Beneath the cold, you catch the faintest honeyed note. Beeswax candles once burned here by the dozen. They weren't just for light workers, rubbed wax on sore hands to soothe splinters deep as regret. Something crunches underfoot. You crouch, amber shards glitter in the gloom. A mead bottle, more like a rat's disco ball. 3 centuries back, millers spiked their ale with chamomile to dull the roar of grinding stones. didn't help the insomnia, but at least the rats partied responsibly. You straighten your head, brushes a dangling rope. It sways, a pendulum slicing the dark. Listen close. Can you hear the distant churn of the frozen river? Its song has lulled apprentices to sleep since Charlemagne's reign. Above, the loft gapes, a black mouth dribbling straw. You imagine climbing, fingers clawing rotted rungs, to glimpse the moon through splintered planks. Don't. Hayloft collapses sent more boys to early graves than any demonic possession ever did. Instead, you trace the handle of a rusted sickle, its edge flaking like burnt parchment. Someone once swung this blade at dawn, cutting stalks that become bread, beer, burial shrouds. Circle of life with extra blisters. The cold seeps into your joints now, a reminder that medieval winters didn't care about your threadbare cloak. You huddle near the dead hearth, its ashes still holding the shape of last night's fire. In Normandy, millers kept embers burning year-round, fearing angry spirits would torch the place if flames died. Smart or paranoid depends whether you've met a pyromaniac poltergeist. Your eyelids dip, the mill's sighs blending into your slowing pulse. One truth spans every century. Exhaustion tastes the same. Kings collapsed on silk pillows. You slump against a flour sack. Both dreamed of warmth, of softness, of mornings without creaking bones. The dark presses closer, a wool blanket woven from shadows and river murmurs. Some say the first mills were modeled on Viking longhouses, their rafters curved like inverted ships. Others insist they're cousins to Egyptian granaries. Those too were plagued by mice and existential dread. A floorboard pops, you jerk awake. Moonlight's shifted. It licks a patch of wall where initials are carved. T. M 1583. Touching the letters, you wonder if Thomas, whatever his name was, also startled at every drip and scratch. Fun fact: Miller's thumb was a real condition, a deformity from years of testing flour texture. Imagine explaining that to your Tinder match. Your knees protest as you stand, fleeing the chill seeping up through your soles. Near the door, a cobweb glistens dew, frost. Either way, it's a necklace fit for a corpse bride. You smirk until a creak overhead suggests the rafters disagree. Wind or wraith? Flip a coin. Outside, the village sleeps, chimneys puffing like pipe smokers, while you're stuck playing night watch. Ever notice how loneliness amplifies ancient smells? That's not poetic BS, it's science. Medieval noses logged trauma too. You fish a withered apple from your pocket, biting into grainy flesh. The juice sours on your tongue, fermented by time and poor storage. Class move. Food historians claim famines bred creativity, hence bread made from acorns and desperation. Bon appetit. A draft slithers past, snuffing the lantern. Darkness swallows you whole. No panic, just the mill's heartbeat thudding through floorboards. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. 3 Dawn's first blush leaks through cracks, fingernails of light prying open the night. You blink at the sickle, now glowing faintly, a rusted crescent moon. Somewhere, a blacksmith's hammer clangs the village, stirring like a drowsy beast. But here, the mill exhales, its job done for now. Your job, surviving the walk home, past icy puddles and roosters screaming like they've seen the apocalypse. Same, buddy. Same. The hearth's glow licks at your ankles as you slump onto a wheat-stuffed cushion, its seams bursting like overripe fruit. Embers pop, ghostly fireflies vanishing upward into soot-stained rafters. You wiggle toes toward the heat, every knuckle sighing like a relieved old man. Shadows leap as a log splits, sending sparks spiraling into darkness like drunken stars. Fun fact, medieval hearths weren't just for cooking. They heated irons for sealing letters, paranoias, glue keeping noble secrets tucked in parchment. Your boot prods a charred bread crust, probably the miller's 8th attempt at edible oat loaf tonight. That man could burn water. A sack of flour leans nearby, its lumpy form resembling a snoozing ghost. You flick a pebble at it. Dust puffs out, filling your nostrils with the scent of thunderstorms and hard labor. Historians still argue whether peasants napped in flour piles, or if that's just miller apprentice propaganda. The fire hisses as fat drips from a haunch of something. Let's call it venison. Could be squirrel. Who knows? The woods have been cagey this season. You breathe in wood smoke, its tang sharp as the village midwife's tongue. Here's a quirky tidbit. Folks once believed ash from a hearth could cure baldness. Smear it on your scalp, sing a drinking song, beg the saints for mercy. Judging by the miller's shiny dome, the method's as reliable as a paper bucket. Flames paint shapes on the wall. A wobbly castle, a pregnant goat, something that might be a dancing bear. Or maybe a very confused owl. The miller's wheeze echoes from upstairs, a harmony to the chimney's low whistle. You toss another log on birch this time, its bark peeling like sunburnt skin. Heat seeps into your tunic, the wool scratchier than a philosopher's beard. Your eyelids dip. Shadows stretch longer, fingertips brushing flour sacks, grain bins, the rusty axe no one mentions. A mouse skitters across the hearthstones, its tail flicking like a metronome, set to panic. Sleep comes in waves, each crackle of the fire a lullaby. The world shrinks to this circle of warmth, this fistful of light punching through the hungry dark. Your last coherent thought. At least the rats aren't wearing doublets tonight. That's the thing about hearths. They don't care if you're king or rat catcher. The flames chew your offerings all the same. The river's growl pulls you from the hearth's embrace, its voice deeper than the miller's cellar. You follow the sound, boots crunching gravel that glitters like cracked pepper under moonlight. The water wheel looms ahead, slats groaning as the current spins them into wet, shivering sighs. Fun fact, these wheels didn't just grind grain. Medieval towns used them to pump bellows for blacksmiths, iron breath keeping forges alive. Your fingers brush the wheel's mossy rim cold as a widow's wedding ring. Frogs croak from the reeds, a chorus of wet burps tuning up for night shift. A fish leaps, silver-bellied, and gone before you blink. Ripples spread, copying each other lazily like apprentices, tracing the master's sketch. Historians still argue whether water wheels drained moats during sieges, or if that's just tavern talk from drunk stonemasons. You lean over the sluice gate, your reflection splintering into a dozen shadowy twins. Here's a quirky tidbit. Locals once whispered that rivers mirror the underworld after dark. Throw in a copper coin, and you'll glimpse your death date in the ripples. You dig a penny from your pocket, pause, then pocket it again. Some shows aren't worth the ticket. The wheel creaks, a rhythmic bark that sets your teeth humming. You trace its motion, wooden teeth biting water, spitting foam. It's hypnotic, like watching a clock made of anger and river spit. Something slithers near your foot, eel or root. You decide not to investigate. Moonlight paints the current pewter, except where it curls around rocks, boiling white as a baker's knuckles. You inhale wet stone and rotting willow, a perfume staler than the miller's jokes. A bat zips overhead, wingtips grazing the water like a skipped stone. Your toes inch toward the edge of pebbles, shifting underfoot. Cold spray kisses your ankles, a flirtation that'll leave you with soggy boots tomorrow. The river doesn't apologize. It never does. That's the thing about rivers. They'll sing you lullabies while stealing your shoes. You yawn, jaw cracking, and turn back toward the mill. Frogs hit their final note, a wet hiccup as darkness swallows the shore. The flower room welcomes you back, its air thick with ghosts of 1,000 harvests. Sacks slump against stone walls, patient as donkeys waiting for dawn's burden. You plunge a hand into open grain cool, silt fine, each kernel whispering of sun-soaked fields. Your thumbnail catches on a pebble smooth as a baby's tooth. Toss it into the dark clink. The mill's swallowed worse. Memory ambushes you, 8 years old, standing tiptoe at the kneading trough. Dough clung to your fingers like stubborn glue. The miller loomed behind you, his breath sour with yesterday's ale. Press, don't pet it, he'd growled, but his eyes crinkled at the edges. That first loaf emerged lopsided, a charcoal-bellied toad of bread. You'd gnawed it anyway, pride sweetening the ash. A moth drifts into your lantern beam, wings dusted like fresh-baked short crust. Modern bakers use packets, but medieval folk trapped wild yeast in cloth, sourdough starters born from hungry necessity. You drag a sack across flagstones, grain shifting inside like a shrug. The miller's chuckle echoes in your skull rough as a whetstone dragged across iron. Funny thing, your fingers still curl the way he taught you. Thumbs locked, knuckles driving hard, dough yielding like a rival's jaw. Historians still argue whether master bakers kept lice in their beards to prove they never touched unclean meats. You wipe flour from your brow, streaking sweat into makeshift war paint. Moonlight slants through a high window, cutting the dark into geometric bread slices. Your shadow stretches tall as the miller once stood, then shrinks as clouds pass. Country wives once believed burnt crusts scared off wraiths, tossing blackened loaves into storm cellars. You snort, but glance at the oven's black maw all the same. A flour sack sighs as you lean against it, releasing trapped summer heat. Chaff sticks to your neck, itching like unfinished business. That first loaf's failure taught you texture, the way dough hums when gluten strands tense. The miller never praised, just grunted again, flinging another lump of flour your way. Wind sneaks through cracks, stirring pale eddies across the floor. You sketch a face in the dust, broad nose, squint lines, a mouth frozen mid-roar. The miller's likeness stares back until your sleeve erases him with one swipe. 3 mice scatter from the grain bin tails, flicking like metronomes, set too fast. Their ancestors probably dined on your first loaf. You scatter crumbs, a piece offering for generations of silent theft. The miller would have set traps, but the miller's not here tonight. Your stomach growls, low and resonant as the water wheel's song. Kneading burns more calories than folks think. Ask any Roman soldier who baked on campaign. You chip at yesterday's loaf, rock-hard crust, resisting like a locked door. The miller's laugh erupts in your mind again, a sound that could curdle milk or warm bones. Dawn's still hours off, but your fingers twitch for the dough trough's embrace. Flour drifts onto your lashes, blurring the world into a powdered dream. Some say bakers inherit their craft, THROUGH, Chinese letter memories, muscles, remembering what minds forget. You flex your hands, knuckles popping, and reach for the waiting grain. The miller's ghost watches from the corner. You feel it. Or maybe that's just the sack of rye shifting in the draft. Doesn't matter. You begin. A tabby materializes from shadow, golden eyes catching lantern light like coins in a wishing well. It rubs against your stool, rough tongue rasping against splintered wood. Mice vanish. There retreat a dry rustle beneath the floorboards. The cat's purr syncs with the water wheel's creak, 2 ancient engines humming in tandem. You stroke its wiry fur, count 3 nicks in its left ear. Medieval grain stores often kept cats on official payroll, paid in bread crusts and lard. This one's ancestors might hunted rodents for Charlemagne's stables, or napped through the Black Death. Its claws knead your thigh, needle sharp, claiming you as temporary furniture. Moonlight paints silver stripes across its back. Freya's chariot pullers, Old Norse called cats, though this specimen's more cart mule than divine steed. It yawns, revealing teeth that have tasted 100 mouse hearts. Historians still argue whether bakers used cat paws to imprint loaves, or if those claw marks came from clumsy apprentices. The tabby freezes, ears swiveling toward the seed bins. A mouse nose quivers at the baseboard. You watch the dance play out, predators twitch versus prey's tremor. 14th century Paris fined citizens who harmed granary cats more steeply than those who beat their wives. The tabby pounces, sending your lantern swinging wild shadows. You find a shrew's skull in the grain tomorrow. Tonight, let predator and prey orbit in their endless waltz. The cat returns, bloodless victory, its muzzle dusty from the chase. It butts your hand until scritches resume. Roman legionaries smuggled cats in their kit, not for pest control, but to read omens in their whiskered witches. This one's whiskers say feed me, plain as a barkeep's tab. You crumble yesterday's rye crust, watch disdain twist its face. Mice regroup near the water barrel, tiny conspirators. Their ancestors pilfered Egyptian pharaohs, storehouses, ate figs meant for the afterlife. You flick a pebble, they scatter like coins from a cut purse. The tabby watches, unimpressed by your aim. 3 heartbeats pass yours, the cat's, the mill's hidden pulse. Country folk once believed kittens born in granaries could see wind spirits. You blow flour toward the rafters, the tabby bats at nothing. Maybe it's chasing ghosts of better-fed centuries. It curls into a cinnamon roll shape, tail tucked over nose. Moonlight shifts, its fur becomes a map of forgotten trade routes. Silk Road merchants carried cats in bamboo cages, trading mousers for jade and cinnamon. You trace the scars on its ears, each notch a battle hymn. Dawn's still distant when the tabby abandons you, melting into the same shadows that birthed it. Mice reclaim their kingdom, nibbling courage from the darkness. You sweep flour into a crescent moon shape, a temporary atlas for tiny feet. The granary holds its breath, cat, mice, human suspended in truce. Tomorrow's flour will hold traces of this night, whisker, claw, and the quiet wisdom of hunters who never starve. Wind rattles the shutters. Somewhere, a feather-light paw lands on creaking wood. You keep kneading. Wind shrieks through chinks in the shutters, a chorus of invisible furies. Timber beams groan, their song pitched between defiance and exhaustion. You press a palm against the north wall, feel vibrations from the battle outside. 14th century carpenters built this mill with interlocking joints, no nails to rust in river damp. Raindrops drum the slate roof, a manic scribe jotting secrets too fast to parse. Your candle flame cowers, flattened sideways by drafts slipping through the stone. Historians still argue whether medieval storms were truly fiercer, or if we've just softened under wool socks and weather apps. You wedge a rag into the rattling window seam, watch it flutter like a surrender flag. Somewhere above, the water wheel protests, its creaks rising to match the wind's howl. 18th century sailors swore thunderstorms smelled like burnt almonds. You catch whiffs of wet pine resin instead. The air thickens, pressure dropping like a baker flattening dough. Your ears pop, a sensation village midwives once blamed on cloud babies being born. Lightning bleaches the room white for one breath. Everything's a charcoal sketch. Thunder follows, the sound of God rolling empty ale barrels across heaven's floorboards. You count the seconds between flash and rumble, old trick to measure distance. 7 miles, maybe 8, the storm's pacing like a caged bear. Rain finds a new angle, needling through the chimney gap. It hisses against hot hearthstones, steam curling into phantom shapes. A 1623 pamphlet claimed storms, scrubbed evil spirits from the air. Tonight's downpour feels less like cleansing, more like vengeance. You jam a bread pan under the leak, tinny plinks marking each drop's surrender. The mill holds its oak bones, remembering centuries of squalls. One beam bears axe marks from the 30 years. War local lore says it stopped a cannonball mid-flight. Doubtful, but the groove fits your thumb perfectly when lightning flares again. Roof tiles chatter like anxious teeth. Medieval masons mixed horsehair in mortar for luck. Maybe it worked. The ceiling stays stubbornly dry. Your breath fogs the window pane. Through wavering glass, the storm flexes its muscles, trees bowing like supplicants. Farmers once buried live geese at property corners to calm angry skies, their feathers found centuries later, perfectly preserved. You pity the goose, but envy its eternal nap away from dripping ceilings. A draft snakes down your collar cold as a banker's smile. You huddle nearer the hearth, its embers whispering gossip about better days. Rain mutters threats against the thatched sheep shed. You hope the tabbies found drier hunting grounds. Thunder shakes the spice jars, cumin and coriander dancing in their racks. Someone in ancient Nineveh wrote recipes on clay tablets during storms, ink swirling with rain splatter. You scribble a bread recipe in flour dust, 3 lines before a gust erases your work. The mill forgives nothing, dawns a rumor when the tempest retreats, growling north toward fussier villages. Dripping eaves mark time like a broken clock. You step onto the porch, mud sucks at your boots, greedy. The yard's a quilt of puddles, each reflecting a sky washed clean. Inside, the hearth exhales one final sigh of wood smoke. Somewhere beyond the soaked fields, the storm murmurs to itself, already rehearsing next week's encore. Mud sucks at your boots, thick as porridge left too long on the hearth. You kick them off, toes sinking into hay warmed by stored-up sunbeams. The rope ladder sways, its knots creaking like an olden sailor's joints. 17th century millers nailed horseshoes upside down in haylofts, a supposed charm against lightning strikes. You count 7 rusted crescents overhead, half-eaten by time. Moonlight leaks through warped planks, dappling the straw like a leopard's pelt. You sprawl on your back, hay prickling through your shirt. The roof's cracks form constellations only drunks and insomniacs chart. Roman soldiers believed hay cured toothache, a fact you doubt, while plucking stalks from your hair. Above, the Milky Way sprawls, spilled flour across the baker's table of night. A shooting star streaks, its tail whitening the dust motes around you. Medieval sailors feared such streaks were demons, fingernails scratching the sky. You make a wish anyway, something crude about the miller's snoring. The dark chuckles back, maybe an owl, maybe the rafters settling. Your lantern gutters, oil running low. You twist the wick down, flame shrinking to a drowsy amber pupil. Historians still argue whether haylofts doubled as secret chapels during grain shortages. The air smells of dried clover and mice, no trace of sanctity here. A bat flits through the east window, wingtips brushing your cheek like a debt collector's glove. You reach for the cider jug, last night's dregs vinegar sharp on your tongue. 18th century diarists wrote about drunk bats staggering through barns, though that might have been the writers themselves. Stars pulse brighter now, pinholes in God's flour sack. The Big Dipper tilts, pouring darkness over the sleeping village. Your blanket rasps, scratchier than the miller's 3-day beard. You ball it up, pillow-shaped disappointment. Cold seeps through floorboards, winter's breath testing the gaps. Tudor laws fined farmers for hayloft fires, yet every fifth rung shows charcoal scars. The roof creaks, its timbers contracting like frostbit fingers. A cowbell clanks in distant fields, some insomniac heifer haunting the turnip rows. You count breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth, until constellations blur into a blindman's scribble. Dawn's still hours off, the sky's black broth, unbroken by salt stars. Your eyelids droop, the Milky Way smearing into a breadcrumb trail. Somewhere below, the millstone mutters in its sleep. The last thing you see is a spider weaving Orion's belt between two rusted nails. The spider's web shivers, strands chiming like a damp finger on wet glass. Your breath slows the hayloft, dissolving into starlit barley fields. Old Tomas's voice curls through your skull, a creaky hinge stuck between memory and dream. They called her Amana, he'd rasped, tapping his ale mug for rhythm. Voice smoother than fresh-churned butter, if butter could whisper folktales. Moonlight bleaches the stalks silver, 1,000 scythe blades frozen mid-swing. You tread softly, though the barley parts like pilgrims before a queen. 18th century millers buried rye kernels under hearthstones, a petty bribe for good harvests. Tomas swore he'd found 9 blackened grains beneath the mill's foundation, arranged in a broken circle. A breeze ripples the fields, sighing as one. Your neck prickles, like someone's drawn a cold spoon down your spine. Amana's myth might, sprung from Roman grain cults, legions offering spelt cakes to Ceres at each new moon. Yet Tomas claimed she was older, a spirit born when the first sickle bit wheat. Historians still argue whether those Bronze Age figurines clutching sheaves depict gods or just farmers with bad arthritis. Something glints ahead, a sickle half buried in loam, blade licked blue by moonlight. You kneel, finger grazing the handle's worm-eaten wood. Night air thickens, sweet-rotten, like cider left to turn. A shadow drapes over you, weightless as cobweb, yet colder than January streams. Late for the reckoning, murmurs a voice, each word a distant bell tolling underwater. You freeze, jaw clenched tighter than a miser's purse strings. Medieval chronicles tell of corn wives haunting mills, punishing those who shorted measurements. But Tomas's Amana wasn't some ledger keeper with a grudge. He described her as change itself, seed to shoot, grain to flour, life to ash. The shadow tilts, a silhouette now, edges blurred like ink in rain. Breathe, it says, and the command hooks your ribs like a fish gig. Air scrapes your throat, suddenly aware of each lung's sorry capacity. Your vision swims. The sickle's curve becomes a crescent moon, then a cat's claw, then nothing. When you blink awake, dew soaks your shirt, hay poking your ribs. The spider's gone, Orion's belt, now a tangle of snapped threads. Dawn stains the east pink as a butcher's slab. Somewhere below, the millstone creaks, grinding nothing but shadows and old hopes. You sit up, palm brushing something chill in the hay. A single rye kernel rests there, blackened by fire, split down the middle like a miniature tomb. The rye kernel digs into your palm, its split edges sharp as a hangnail. Moonlight slants through the bakehouse shutters, dust swirling like crumbs of outer space. Your elbow deep in flour, by the third yawn kneading dough that fights back, a sticky, quivering beast. Across Europe, medieval bakers tested oven temps with handfuls of ash. If it turned gold, the heat was right. Your oven's iron door glows, crimson cracks spiderwebbing its surface, a dragon's egg about to hatch. Dough bulges under the linen cloth, yeast exhaling secrets into the midnight air. You snort, that rye kernels still glued to your hand, dippy little barnacle. Old Mrs. Potts swore raw dough could predict storms. If it rose crooked, expect hailstones big as pigeon eggs. Historians still argue whether those bread rolls in pharaohs' tombs were funeral snacks or symbolic booby traps. The fire hisses, a log splits, its sap popping like a dislocated joint. You chuck the rye kernel into the flames. It sparks green for half a heartbeat. 19th century sailors baked magic loaves with mercury and laudanum, meant to ward off sea witches. Yours is simpler, just flour, water, and whatever hope hasn't seeped into the floorboards. Linen peels back, the dough sighs, bloated and pale as a drowned sheep. Your thumbprint sinks into its flank, filling slowly like a swamp swallowing a boot. Oven heat licks your face, reminding you of that time you kissed a blacksmith's apprentice. Both left blisters. You crouch, peering through the oven's glowing maw. Embers pulse, ancient hearths once doubled as bed warmers during peasant winters. The dough slides onto the peel, quivering, commitment phobic. A rhyme loops in your skull, something Tomas chanted while salting thresholds. Bake the night, break the blight, mind the cracks that sip the light. Flames snap as the loaf enters, its shadow staggers across the soot-stained bricks. You jam the peel back into the corner. It knocks over a jug of sourdough starter. The stuff oozes, alien and glooping, a yeasted ectoplasm. 18th century French bakers got executed for inflating bread prices. Now that's a crusty way to go. Time bends. Oven watching always does. You count fireflies through the window. 11, no 12 drunken stars. The smell hits caramelized crust, childhood mornings, burnt fingertips on church communion wafers. When you yank the loaf out, it's singed along one curve, a crescent moon with commitment issues. Tapping the underside, the hollow thunk says done, or possibly, I contain a family of panicked beetles. You slice the heel off, steam escapes, a ghostly finger beckoning. Butter melts, a golden landslide over charred cliffs. First bite cracks between your teeth. The CRUMB Chinese letter. If perfection means tasting faintly of wood smoke and poor decisions. The remaining fire shrinks to coals. The ovens glow. Now a sleepy housecat's purr. Flour dusts your sleeves. You've become a powdered donut of exhaustion. That rye kernel's laughing at you from the ashes, a tiny charcoal eye. Somewhere beyond the mill, a fox barks, the sound as dry as your last biscuit. You slump against the cooling bricks, crust flakes, snowing into your lap. Dawn's still hours off, but the loaf's gone, reduced to crumbs and grease spots. Your tongue probes a molar, extracting a poppy seed that survived the bake. Villagers once planted these in their children's ears, believing it prevented lies from taking root. The seed flicks into the dark, another tiny offering to the kitchen gods. Wind nudges the door open, a cold nose against your sweat-damp neck. Embers wink out one by one, each a miniature sunset. You'll blame the smoke later for the sting in your eyes, the salt on your cheeks. The millstone groans upstairs, grinding nothing but time and maybe your last good nerve. Moonlight retreats, the oven's mouth, now a slack-jawed shadow. You press your palm to its cooled tiles, still humming with the memory of fire. Knees crack as you stand, a symphony of regrets. The empty bread basket creaks on its nail, swinging like a pendulum, counting down to dawn. One poppy seed glints on the floor, a black period, ending this crumb-dusted sentence. You pocket it, a souvenir for nights when the oven's breath feels colder. Outside, the river mutters recipes to the willows, its secrets half-baked and heavy with silt. The mill's timbers settle, a beast shifting in its sleep as flour drifts through cracks like lazy snow. Your fingernails sketch the dough's memory into the worktable swirls and crosshatches, a language only hunger understands. The last ember surrenders, a final exhale, leaving the scent of promises baked too hard. The candle's flame hiccups, casting your shadow 9 feet tall on the far wall, a lanky giant with flour in its hair. Cobwebs strung between ceiling beams glint silver threads in the shaky light as draft snakes through cracks. You squint at the shapes flickering above. Is that a duck? Or maybe a grumpy king riding a goat? Medieval candle makers used sheep fat for tallow, though tonight's stub smells more like exhaustion. And last Tuesday's mutton stew. A barn owl shrieks the sound, jabs your spine like an icicle. Silence splinters, glass sharp, before reforming. 17th century poets swore owls hooted in Latin hexameter. If you listened sideways during a waning moon, you don't speak owl. But that one definitely muttered et tu, brute, before winging off. Historians still argue whether castle candlesticks were status symbols, or just really overpriced bug zappers. Your Shadow King raises his blob arm, gesturing toward the grain sacks stacked like lumpy thrones. The flame dips. A draft licks your earlobe, brrr. Victorians believed counting candle drips foretold your death date. You stop at 3. Not your circus, not your doomed clowns. The owl screeches again, closer now, its silhouette cuts across the moonlit window. You have expected to drop a scroll sealed with wax. Town archives mention a plague year when owls nested in the church bell, ringing it at midnight with their talons. The priest called it divine comedy. His congregation called for a catapult. Cobwebs sway, their shadows braiding into lace on the rafters. You trace a finger through the dust on the sill, writing your initials beside ones from 1792. Someone named G.H. carved a tiny horse here, its legs mid-gallop. Bet G.H. also debated goat-shaped shadows and owl politics. The candle gutters, wax pooling around its base, a miniature amber sea. You steady it with sticky fingers, remembering that Tudor stagehands used candle smoke to simulate ghosts. Right now, you'd kill for a spectral hedgehog riding a tiny tandem bike. Anything but this creeping quiet. Another shriek, this time answered by a second owl across the river. Great, now they're dueling. 18th century naturalists documented owls stealing wigs from sleeping judges, allegedly for nest insulation. You pat your flour-crusted hair, just in case. The flame shrinks, a dying star in a tin socket. Shadows thicken your giant self, now squatty and misshapen, a goblin with a hunched back. Medieval peasants burned rowan wood to repel night terrors. You've got splinters and regret close enough. Wind rams the shutters. The candle surrenders. Darkness slams down like a coffin lid. Grain sacks rustle. Something skitters over your boot. Dutch sleep myths claim counting mouse squeaks cures insomnia. You reach 11 before the owl's final cry pierces the rafters. A rusty nail dragged across slate. Moonlight bleeds back in pale and jittery. The candle's corpse smolders, its wick curled like a dead centipede. You pocket the wax blob, a makeshift chess piece for desperate times. Outside, the mill pond glints, its surface etched with ripples from the owl's departure. Your shadow's gone now, folded into the greater dark. The beams creak, a Morse code of old wood vapors. Historians still argue whether necessity invented candles or just desperation. You lean into the silence, letting it press against your eardrums until the river's whisper resurfaces, muffled but insistent. Something cold brushes your neck, probably a draft. Probably. You hum that tavern tune about a one-eyed badger and a runaway bridle, lips chapped, voice sandpaper rough. The owl doesn't join in. Rude, dawns a rumor on the eastern hills. But the dark holds firm, an ink-stained bully. You count grain sacks instead of sheep. 1920, 20 weight. Was that sack there before? The owl's cry lingers, echoing in your jaw hinge, as the first sparrow tweets a half-hearted rebuttal. The sparrow's chirp fades your ankle deep in dew-soaked grass. The well's curved stones biting your palms. Iron chain licks your fingers cold as a banker's smile before the bucket plummets. 17 heartbeats pass before the splash, a wet cough echoing up the shaft. Roman engineers built wells with tiered steps for maintenance, though this one's just a hungry throat lined with moss. Your reflection shivers, water ripples erasing your eyes, then nose, leaving a mouth floating in nothingness. 18th century sailors swore well water showed your future face if gazed at under a crescent moon. Historians still argue whether village witches used wells for prophecy or just clever eavesdropping. A droplet falls, your mirror self wrinkles into a grandfather you've never met. The bucket resurges, sloshing dark liquid that smells of flint and frog skin. You drink anyway, chill water numbing your teeth, taste buds staging a revolt. Medieval manuscripts recommended well water for curing lovesickness. Results may vary. Side effects include dysentery and existential dread. Chains clank, a metallic choir echoing off the stones. Your grip slips, palm meeting something carved into the wood, 4 notches, a child's tally marks. Wind rifles through the oaks, their leaves hissing lies. Below, the water steadies, your reflection reassembles, but the eyes stay gone. Empty sockets stare back, charcoal pits in a flour-dusted face. Your breathing syncs with the drip-drip from the bucket, a metronome for the damned. A frog plops into the well, its croak ballooning into a baritone burp. You snort, the sound bounces off wet stones, mocking you 13-fold. Tudor plumbers used to drop live eels into wells to clean the vibes. Wonder if the eels got hazard pay. Clouds smother the moon, your hands vanish, become ghost paws fumbling at the chain. The village lies mute, no candle glow, no coughs, just this liquid darkness. You recall old Bridget's tale, a girl who traded her shadow to the well spirit for pretty curls. Got the hair, but sunlight burned her bald by noon. Water trembles again, your reflection splits, 2 faces now identical, except the second smiles. Your actual mouth, frozen mid-grimace, cold seeps through your boots, creeps up your calves like ivy. 19th century gravediggers reported wells weeping after floods, though you're pretty sure that's just hydraulic pressure being theatrical. The smiling twin reaches up, fingertips breaking the surface, water warping around them. You backpedal, heel catching on a root, ass meeting mud with a wet thwack. Chain goes berserk, bucket dancing its jig, spilling secrets across the grass. Moon vomits light again, your twin's gone, but the tally marks on the bucket glow faintly. 4 grooves, now 5. Didn't you count 4 before? The frog croaks, a rusty door hinge symphony. You swipe mud off your trousers, palms printing constellations on the fabric. Cleopatra, supposedly bathed in ass milk, you've got well-water grunge chic. Different kind of historic. Dawn's first blush nipples the horizon, the well's mouth yawns, full of night's leftovers. Your reflection returns, eyes intact now, but the left pupils blown wide. Pupil contracts as you lean closer, mimicking focus, coincidence, or some submerged thing studying you back. The chain stills, last drops falling like pinhead bells. You half expect the water to speak, offer riddles, demand 3 wishes. Instead, it just ripples where a mayfly kisses the surface. Your stomach growls. Only fantasy here is breakfast. Mud squelches as you rise, knees popping like corn kernels. The tally marks stay vivid, carved deep despite the bucket's rot. 5 lines, maybe a week's haul. A child's fishing count. A prison sentence. Historians still argue whether well tallies recorded grain stores or early existential crises. You kick the bucket. It tips, spilling the last inch across your boot. The water draws a map on the leather, tiny rivers fleeing towards your toes. Something glints in the mud, a coin green as jealousy. You pocket it payment for blood loss to mosquitoes. The well exhales, a damp sigh that ruffles your hair. Maybe it's the spirit of indoor plumbing haunting this relic. Your shadow stretches east, stretchy-limbed and faint, as sparrows resume their scolding. The village remains asleep, a suffocated furnace, each brick holding its breath. Backing away, you trip over yesterday's footprints in the mud. The well's rim winks, a final ripple catching the light, an eyelid closing. Your throat parches again, but you'll risk death by ale at the tavern instead. 5 steps from the well, the coin in your pocket warms, probably imagination. Probably that story about Templars hiding gold in wells. Total fiction. Unless, you keep walking, the chains clank, fading with each stride, until the mill's silhouette swallows you whole. Wheat brushes your thighs, each stalk bowing like courtiers to some invisible king. Moonlight threads through the grain gilding edges, transforming the field into a swaying tapestry. 17 paces ahead, a fox freezes, ears swiveling toward a rustle you can't hear. Its nose twitches, sampling the night's menu, damp soil and river musk. Roman farmers planted rosemary near wheat fields, its sharp scent supposedly warded off crop blight. You're pretty sure it just made bread taste like soap. The fox blinks, amber eyes reflecting the Milky Way's sprawl. Wind riffles its fur, red coat rippling like liquid copper. Crickets hush, holding their breath as you mimic the fox's stillness. Medieval peasants believed foxes carried messages from woodland spirits, though this one seems more interested in sniffing vole trails. Your boot creaks, the sound volcanic in the silence. The fox dissolves into shadows, leaving only a flick of its brush tip. You kneel, fingers skimming wheat heads. Kernels press against your palm, plump as a baker's thumbs. Harvests close, the air hums with that ripe, sweet straw tension. 18th century millers timed harvests by the thumb test. If grains dented under pressure, scythes flew at dawn. Yours spring back, cheeky little rebels. A moth lands on your wrist, pale wings fanning slower. You recall village tales of grain moths guiding lost wanderers. This one's wings bear crescent marks, like tiny moon phases stitched in ash. Entomologists would kill for such a specimen. You blow gently, sending it spiraling upward. The path narrows, wheat stalks leaning closer, whispering secrets in your ears. Their dry voices rasp of drought years, and plow blades biting deep. Historians still argue whether ancient granaries employed guard dogs or just hung wolf pelts as scare tactics. You picture some sun-leathered farmer draping a mangy pelt, muttering about cost-effective security. Moonbeams catch something metallic in the soil, a broken scythe blade. Its edge flakes red with rust, the handle long reclaimed by worms. You nudge it with your toe, iron singing a dull note. Blacksmiths once quenched blades in ox blood for strength, a practice that mainly attracted very confused flies. Your shadow stretches east, gangly and disjointed, as clouds chew the moon. The field exhales, a gust rippling through the wheat like a serpent's spine. Cold seeps through your shirt, a reminder that autumn licks at summer's heels. Tudor peasants wore garlic garlands during harvest, not for vampires, but to mask the stench of unwashed bodies. Something crunches underfoot, a snail shell reduced to pearly shards. You crouch, prodding the wreckage with a straw. Its spiral reminds you of the mill's water wheel, both designs stolen from nature's playbook. Roman engineers copied snail spirals for aqueduct drains, proving plagiarism's been trendy for millennia. The fox reappears, 30 paces west, nose skyward. A barn owl's cry fractures the night. The fox flinches, then trots away with forced nonchalance. You smirk, recognizing the same meant to do that strut cats use after falling off tables. Wind shifts, carrying the mill's faint heartbeat. Wheat sways toward the sound, a golden tide pulled by timber's rhythm. You count 73 steps back to the fence post, its chipped paint glowing bone white. Farmers once marked boundaries with animal skulls, a literal bone fence that probably confused archaeologists for decades. A single poppy bleeds scarlet amidst the gold, defiant as a bloodstain on linen. You snap its stem, twirling the flower between thumb and forefinger. Victorians considered poppies in grain fields bad luck, blaming them for everything from sour milk to gout. The petal's silk brushes your lip bitter as unspoken regrets. Clouds finally swallow the moon hole. The field dims, edges blurring into formless dark. Your breath hitches, suddenly aware of how many beings rustle in the black. Something skitters past your ankle, field mouse or spider, both equally nightmare fuel. Lightning bugs ignite, jade sparks flickering in Morse code. You trap one in cupped hands, its abdomen pulsing against your lifeline. Papyri from Alexandria describe priests using fireflies as altar lamps, though you doubt the bugs cooperated politely. The mill's lantern glimmers ahead, a buttery smear in the gloom. Wheat parts before you, 100 scratchy fingers tugging at sleeves. You resist glancing back at the field, knowing full well that's how horror tales start. 3 gnarled apples rot by the fence, their fermented sweetness cloying the air. You kick one, it bursts in a spray of brown pulp. Wasps rise, drunken lords protesting the destruction of their castle. Gravel crunches underfoot, a welcome contrast to the field's oppressive softness. The fox yips once, a sound like a rusted hinge. You salute the dark, grateful for company that asks no questions. Your pocket jingles, the well's coin still nestled there. Wheat rustles behind a sound like dry laughter. Historians still argue whether Roman crop rotation involved actual rotating fields or just enthusiastic peasant rumors. You picture Carthaginian farmers spinning plots like dinner plates, snorting into the collar of your shirt. The mill door groans open, spilling lamplight across your boots. One final glance back. The fields, a black sea now, fox and wheat, and secrets submerged. Your shadow crosses the threshold first, eager to merge with the warm, flower-dusted dark inside. You cross the threshold, flower motes swirling in lamplight like snow, glimpsed through a fever dream. The miller's cough seeps through floorboards, each hack a mallet, striking wet oak. 17 steps up the stairs. You pause, counting the rasp between each creaking tread. 19th century lungs relied on honey tonics, sometimes laced with opium. But he'd spit that out faster than sour ale. His door hangs ajar, a slice of firelight painting the hallway's dust. You glimpse his shadow, a hunched puppet jerking with every expelled breath. The hearth exhales rosemary smoke. Medieval apothecaries swore it purified bad humors. But tonight, it just stings your eyes. He's propped in a winged chair, wool blanket slipping off bony shoulders like water off a millstone. River sighs drift through the window, counterpoint to his wheezing tempo. Historians still argue whether Renaissance doctors mistook tuberculosis for miasmic fog, or just charged extra for Latin diagnoses. You kneel, retrieving the fallen blanket, its fibers rough as his laughter used to be. Pointless, boy, he grunts, voice scraped raw. His hand trembles, reaching for a clay cup, water sloshing over chapped lips. 17th century quacks sold dried frog amulets as cough cures. You wonder if they'd pair well with turnip stew. You count breaths between coughs, 38 seconds, 29:54. The rhythm defies pattern, a drunkard's attempt at drumming. His nightshirt gapes, revealing a locket pressed to his chest, your mother's braid coiled inside. Midwives once buried placentas under mills to ensure prosperity. You bite back the joke about needing better fertilizer. Firelight glints on his spectacles, lenses crazed as ice on a thawing pond. A ledger lies open, columns of numbers warping into hieroglyphs from his shaking quill. He marks unpaid debts with a dagger symbol, blade pointing at names like an accusation. The river groans below, water wheel creaking under autumn's first chill. Your palm brushes his forehead, damp heat radiating through paper-thin skin. Edwardian sick rooms used vinegar-soaked sheets to break fevers. His skin would pucker like pickled cabbage. He bats you away, strength lingering in those spindle arms. Fetch the accounts, he croaks, nodding at the desk. You lift the ledger, its pages brittle as autumn leaves. 5 copper coins clatter out, the well's payment, hidden under miscellaneous expenses. Candlesticks flank the bed, tallow pooled at their bases like frozen wax waterfalls. 1 flame gutters, casting twin miller shadows that shudder on the wall. 14th century monks believed dying men's shadows held their final thoughts. You watch his ripple and blur. The coughing fit hits, vicious, a wolf gnawing its way out. You press teacup to his lips. He sips chamomile, gritting through yellow dock's herb. Tudor physicians prescribed crushed pearls for consumption, an expensive way to die sparkly. His breathing steadies, fraudulent calm. The locket clicks open, a braid end unspooling like wheat from a thresher. Outside, geese arrow south, their cries fraying at the edges. You count wing beats until his rasp resumes. 36, 59, 22. River fog slithers through the window, licking sweat from his temples. He mutters grain prices, 1903 harvest yields. The winter, the mill froze solid. You hum the old thrashing song, off-key, but his eyelids dip in recognition. Dawn crouches in the east, pale fingers smudging the horizon. His coughs grow liquid, a water wheel choking on silt. You tighten the blanket's knots he taught you last spring, each loop a breath-holding contest with time. The final ember crumbles, ash whispering across the hearth. His hand finds yours, calluses snagging on younger skin. You match your breaths to the river's sigh, counting each labored rise, until light cracks the sky like a split seed. The forge squats silent behind the mill, its brick belly cold for half a century. You push the warped oak door, hinges shrieking like a cat, dragged from a rain barrel. Daylight slashes through rotten roof planks, striping the anvil with zebra glow. Victorians preferred wrought iron anvils, each one hammered longer than a Sunday sermon. But this brute's pockmarked face whispers of older steel. Your boot sinks into ash, still deep enough to swallow a rabbit. Tools hang frozen on pegs, tongs mid-sneeze, hammers petrified in mid-swing. A cracked bellows sprawls against the wall, its leather lungs split like overcooked sausages. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths, raspy puffers cough, cut their lives short, or just made them terrible whistlers. You spit on the anvil, saliva skitters across its pitted cheek. Superstition says a dry anvil invites demons, though you'd take poltergeists over the millers, night choking any day. Cobwebs sway their architects long since mummified in silk. A workbench crouches nearby, its surface scarred by 50 summers of damp. The ledger mentioned an apprentice, drowned when the river burst its banks in 74. His name's scratched near the chimney, Tobias, each letter clawed with a nail. 17 muddy handprints fossilize the wall beside it, palm sizes ranging from child to man. Some claim smithies kept spirit ladders to record apprentices' growth. You tally 3 summers' progress before the tiny prints vanish. Damp clings to your lungs. The air tastes like licking a rusted sword. You peek into the quenching trough. Green water hosts a battalion of wriggling larvae. Renaissance apprentices drank ale over forge water, smart lads, though you'd kill for even warm mead now. Wind winds through a broken window, teasing sparks from dead embers. Your thumbnail tests the anvil's edge. It flakes red dust like dried blood. 3 horseshoes lie buried underneath. Folklore claims they trap luck, but these are cracked beyond repair. A whetstone sits abandoned in the corner, its face worn concave by decades of blades. You drag a thumb across it. Grit bites flesh, leaving a constellation of microcuts. Tudor workshop rhymes warned. A dull axe bleeds the arm. A dull tongue bleeds the soul. Poetic, until you're mopping up your own DNA. Your shadow stretches across the tool wall. A giant gripping phantom hammers. 14th century Germans believed blacksmiths could weld souls to metal. You half expect your silhouette to peel off and start forging regret. The bellows handle creaks as you pump it. Dead spiders rain onto your sleeves. Something glints under the anvil's horn, a twist of copper wire shaped like a heron. Spring floods might have swept Tobias downstream, but this bird feels purposefully placed. Victorian factory girls folded similar trinkets, silent protests against steam-powered looms. You pocket the heron, its wings pricking your thigh through the fabric. A rusted chain dangles from the rafters, swaying just enough to suggest recent disturbance. Coal dust crunches underfoot, each step broadcasting your presence to unseen things. 3 nails jut from a ceiling beam, their heads fused with centuries of grime. The smithy's last fire left a soot ghost on the wall, a man-shaped void reaching for tools he'll never grasp. Industrial Revolution factories banned bearded workers. Sparks could ignite facial hair, but Tobias's ghost clearly missed the memo. The river murmurs outside, louder here than by the mill. You count heartbeats between its gurgles. 34, 57, 21. Cold seeps through your souls. The forge's floor remembers winter's kiss better than any living soul. A draft carries the miller's cough, weaker now, a breeze through bare branches. You trace Tobias's name again, fingertip collecting 50 years of neglect. 19th century obituaries often listed misadventure as cause of death, a polite term for river greed. Sunlight retreats, shadows pool around the anvil like liquid pitch. Your breath fogs in the cooling air, each exhalation a ghost, practicing its vanishing act. Some claim abandoned forges hoard heat for decades, but this one's embraced the chill like an old grudge. The copper heron burns a hole in your pocket as you retreat, its beak pointing toward the river. Door hinges wail again, a sound that'll haunt your dreams before dawn cracks its knuckles. Sleep tugs your eyelids shut. You slump against a flour sack that exhales century-old chaff. Grains shift under your cheek, each husk imprinted with decades of summer heat. The mill's heartbeat thrums through wood grain, slow, steady, a lullaby older than England's enclosure acts. Medieval peasants napped in 2 shifts, waking past midnight to stoke fires or pray. But your body caves into one solid block of exhaustion. Dust motes swirl behind closed eyes, golden constellations rearranging into rolling fields. You float above endless wheat, each stalk bowed under fat moons. Figures trudge below, scythes glinting like fish scales, but their baskets overflow with starlight instead of grain. Historians still argue whether Saxon-era storage pits held ritual offerings or just really ambitious squirrel loot. A black cat pads across the dream fields, owl wings sprouting from its shoulders, with a sound like unrolling parchment. Your left hand twitches, fingers digging into the flour sack's rough weave. 17th century bakers added ground-up bean pods to dough, a sneaky trick to stretch expensive flour. The scent wraps around you, part earth, part burnt toast, part great-grandma's linen cupboard. Someone hums a tune through the walls, or maybe it's the river, impersonating a human voice. The owl cat perches on your chest, its weight measured in feathers and moonlight. Beware the gleaning hour, it purrs, though its mouth doesn't move. Tudor mothers warned children about grain ghosts, spirits who pinched slumberers for stealing nap time from harvests. You try to snort awake, but dream logic holds you tighter than a flour sack knot. Stars melt into silvery stalks, raining down as seeds. You catch one, it pulses like a firefly trapped in your palm. Sleep researchers say humans forget 90% of dreams within 10 minutes, but this one etches itself into your ribs like a brand. The owlcat yawns, revealing a tiny galaxy where its teeth should be. Fields blur into a rippling ocean of barley, waves cresting with every gust of your breath. A figure materializes ahead, its face hidden by a straw hat the size of a cartwheel. It extends a hand, overflowing with poppies, their petals dripping black sap. Victorians doped troublesome infants with poppy syrup, though you're pretty sure this isn't a parenting lesson. The dream shifts, sudden like a rat darting under floorboards. Now you're knee-deep in a granary, the air thick with spores that glow faintly green. A child's laughter echoes, but the only footprints in the dust are your own. Archaeologists once found a Roman villa's walls stuffed with spelt ancient pest control, or the world's worst insulation job. Something cold brushes your ankle. You glance down to see river water swirling around your legs. The copper heron floats past, its wings now flesh and blood. Come home, it croaks, voice bubbling like a drowning man's last words. You reach for it, but your arm moves through molasses-thick air. The flood rises faster now, chill biting through your dream skin. Moonlight fractures on the water's surface, writing cursive words you can't decipher. 18 seconds. That's how long it takes the average person to sink in quicksand, a fact that's useless here. yet your brain serves it up like a last meal. Wheat fields return drenched and dripping, seed heads bobbing like buoy bells. The owlcat sails overhead, dropping mouse-shaped shadows that dissolve before hitting the ground. Your knees buckle, dream muscles failing as cold water laps at your collarbone. The straw-hatted figure reappears, poppies replaced by a sickle smeared with something iridescent. Stay, it rasps, though its lips remain stitched shut with twine. Hunger knots your stomach, sharp, real enough to jar you half awake. The flour sack scratches your temple, its smell now layered with wood smoke and wet dog. Someone's baking cinnamon rolls 3 villages over, or maybe delirium's rewriting your olfactory receptors. The dream claws you back under no courtesy of a transition. Now, you're sprawled atop the water wheel, its rotations synced to your sluggish pulse. Stars reflect on the river below, except they're all wrong. Constellations reshaped into scythes, loaves, a crude horse figurine. Sleep paralysis pins your limbs as the wheel creaks upward, each splintered paddle dripping liquid shadow. Dawn's first gremlin fingers scratch the horizon. But inside the mill, night clings like flour paste. Your heartbeat slows, merging with the river's murmur as the dream finally releases its grip. Warmth seeps through the sack's fabric, last night's oven stones still whispering secrets to your spine. Some claim grain stores absorb memories. Tonight, you almost believe it. The clock's drone seeps through floorboards, a metronome stalking your half-sleep. Each tick carves a sliver from the night, sound waves traveling slower than your exhaustion. 17th century, Dutchmen invented pendulum clocks to map the stars. Now this one mocks your restless legs. You count 12 ticks before spotting the pendulum's truth. It's not brass, but river-polished iron. Your socked feet find cold floor planks, nail heads, catching moonlight like tiny dimes. Grandfather clocks haunted Victorian hallways, their weights shaped like pine cones to mimic nature's order. This pendulum swings a hairbreadth left of center, etching the casing's wood over decades. Historians still argue whether medieval candle clocks burned shorter in winter or peasants just hated math. You press a palm to the cabinet, varnish sticky as half-dried sap. 18th century horologists used beer to clean gears, hops acting as a laxative for gummed-up sprockets. The scent clings, malt and mildew, and the miller's long-dead pipe tobacco. Time stretches your inhale, lasts 3 ticks, your exhale 5. Moonlight stripes the pendulum's path, now a silver scythe slicing shadows. One folk tale claims clocks steal minutes from the dying, hoarding seconds in their weights. Your pinky brushes the iron, shockingly cold, then numb like biting a frostbitten spoon. 11 ticks pass before you feel your fingertip again. The mill's night choir swells, creaks, and river murmurs, tuning against the clock's beat. Tudor inns hung hourglasses by privies, charging patrons extra if sand ran out. You lean closer, counting 617 ticks before noticing the carved initials. J.M. 1799. Grooves the Oak, John Millhouse. Jemima Moore. Another ghost in the grain. Your knees crack as you crouch, eye level with the pendulum's dance. Someone smeared axle grease on the rod, crude theft, deterrent, or butterfingers. 14th century monks hid Jesus pins in clockworks, protesting the tyranny of schedules. The rhythm syncs with your pulse now, dragging both into sludge. 2 moths orbit the moonlit dial, their wings dusting Roman numerals. You wonder if I instead of IV was a clockmaker's joke or stonecutter's error. The miller's cough drifts downstairs, wet gravel in a tin pail, perfectly between ticks. 18 years ago, this clock stopped for 3 days during his wife's death. No one rewound it. Gray light scratches the eastern window, too faint to reset your internal sundial. You trace the pendulum's arc, left to right breath, held like a diver's. Sandwiched behind the weights, a child's biscuit fossilizes beside a mouse-nibbled almanac page. December 17, 80 blurs under mildew, snowstorm records devoured by silverfish. The clock groans, a gear catching as moonlight retreats. Colonial watchmakers added fake keyholes to confuse drunk repairmen, a fact that solves nothing tonight. Your spine remembers the flour sack's embrace. It's hollow where your head dented the grains. Tick, tick, the pendulum's edge tastes of static and forgotten stairs. Dawn's first yawn yellows the window pane. Yet the clock insists it's half past, forever. You imagine peeling each tick off the air, stacking them like oat husks. Victorian factory, whistles stole workers' sleep. This clock's just a sheepdog herding minutes. Your shadow stretches, merging with the pendulum's swipe, as the river exhales mist outside. Key points of light blink out overhead, stars yielding to the clock's tyranny. You count 19 ticks between the miller's coughs, his lungs a broken escapement. Someone glued goose down inside the case, feathers flattened by centuries of vibrations. Sleep tugs again, this time. The clock approves, its ticks softening into lullaby crochets. Your cheek meets floorboards, woodgrain etching checkers into your skin. The pendulum slows, or maybe your heartbeat quickens, racing toward some unseen finish. 17 taverns called the hourglass, burned down before 1700, all that pressurized time exploding. Darkness creeps up your legs, heavy as chain-driven weights, as the final tick dissolves into birdsong. Night gathers its skirts, draping the millyard in moth-chewed velvet. You press a palm to the dew-slick grass, cold seeping through your calluses. Fireflies blink awake, first 1, then 12, a hesitant Morse code. 16th century miners hauled them in bamboo cages, glowing canaries for light-starved tunnels. A green pulse lands on your wrist, its belly a living ember. You cup it gently, exoskeleton smooth as a rye kernel. Rural Japan swore they guided souls, a notion Victorian scientists mocked while stealing specimens. The light fades, then flares, 3 quick bursts. Historians still argue whether their synced dance began as love songs or just confused hungry bats. Another settles on your thumb, its glow revealing cracked cuticles. Ancient alchemists ground their tales into everlight potions, bottled failures stashed in Vatican vaults. The air smells of wet soil and distant bread ovens. You exhale 37 specks, mirroring your breath's rhythm. One darts toward the river, a comet with delusions of grandeur. Female Phocherus species mimic rivals' flashes, luring hopeful males into becoming dinner. Your sandal squelches in mud, the fire fleet parts around you like courtiers. Moonlight bleaches their glow, turning green to silver at the edges. You kneel, knees protesting, to watch two duel with light patterns. Medieval monks transcribed their blinking as secret messages from Archangel Gabriel. Neither insect seems divinely inspired, just horny and flammable. A droplet hits your neck, the sky threatening rain or old roof leaks. A cluster forms near the well, swirling like drunk constellations. Tesla once wired fireflies to his lab coils, briefly outshining Manhattan's gas lamps. Their bioluminescence fizzled under alternating current, a fact he never published. You count 27 flashes before mist blurs the yard into a watercolor. The miller's cat watches from the granary, eyes reflecting double the firefly count. Your pocket watch claims it's midnight, its face lit by captive glow. 16th century courtesans wore them in hairnets, living jewelry for masquerade balls. The cat pounces, fireflies scattering like shattered emeralds. One lands in your hair, tickling your scalp with spindly legs. Naturalists once believed they were fairy spies, their reports read aloud at Royal Society meetings. You rescue it, wings buzzing against your lifeline, and release it toward the moon. Its light winks out, absorbed by the mill's hunched silhouette. Dampness creeps up your sleeves, the party's over. Last one blinks near your ear, a final secret too soft to hear. You trudge inside, retina imprinting afterglow hieroglyphs on every shadow. The hearth's dying breath greets you, ashes mimicking firefly Morse code. As you latch the door, a lone green flicker pulses twice in the rafters. Some mysteries keep their keys, and that's why night exists. You bury cold toes in your bedding, dreaming of bamboo jails for wayward stars. Dawn's first light fingers the quern's crack, bleeding gold into its stony wound. Freshly split, the millstone gapes, a granite scream silenced by the night's teeth. You kneel, palm hovering above the rupture, feeling cold breath rise from dead rock. 4th century Romans buried broken querns under thresholds, warding against vengeful grain spirits. The fracture zigzags like frozen lightning, rough edges snagging your thumbnail. 3 crows land nearby, hoarse laughter grating the morning hush. Their beaks tap the stone, testing its sorrow for weakness. You fling a pebble, they scatter in a flap of indignant feathers. 2 return moments later, perched on the water wheel like judgmental clerks. Medieval French believed orphans could charm sparrows into mending shattered millstones. The birds just shit on the splintered granite, their verdict clear. Up close, the break smells of flint and buried centuries. You press a cheek to its surface, ear tuned for subterranean grumbles. 16th century quernmaker guilds, encoded messages, inveining patterns, their ciphers lost to plague and time. All you hear is yesterday's rain weeping through the crack. Historians still argue whether spiral grooves served practicality or worship of forgotten harvest gods. Your fingers trace the carvings, once smooth as a baker's rolling pin. The miller finds you there, his shadow pooling in the quern's crevice. He spits brown tobacco, juice staining the fracture's edge. Hurts worse than a kicked mule, he rasps, knuckling his bad hip. You imagine the stone's pain, generations of grain screams, compressed into quartz. 18-year-old apprentice Willem shattered a quern in 1637. They buried him beneath its twin. By noon, you've swept stone dust into a leaden jar. The granules glint, tiny imprisoned stars. Your tongue tests the metallic tang. It tastes like failure and static. Renaissance apothecaries prescribed quern powder for melancholia, 3 grains under the tongue at moonrise. You pocket the jar, its weight dragging your apron sideways. Sunset finds the broken quern half buried in nettles, its shadow a sundial of ruin. You crouch tracing names etched by generations of restless mill hands. 11 are illegible, weather-smeared into pockmarked whispers. Near the base, someone carved a crude phallus, a body counterpoint to sacred geometry. 19th century pilgrims scraped off stone fragments, believing they cured barren livestock. A woodlouse navigates the chasm, its antennae twitching at ancient dust. Candlelight that night paints the quern's silhouette on your bedroom wall. Its jagged mouth mimes silent words, half warning, half dare. You press a flour-dusted thumb against the cold glass, projecting shadows into the mill yard. 8 hours ago, this stone ground life into bread. Now, it's a monument to fractures, yours included. Rain comes at midnight, pattering on the sundered stone like a billion tiny hammers. You watch from the hayloft, thunder smudging the horizon into charcoal streaks. Water pools in the quern's crevice, a liquid mirror warped by geology. 3 fireflies drown there, green glimmers snuffed by rain and quartz. Their bodies float, luminous commas, in a sentence the mill wrote centuries ago. Dawn finds you asleep against the quern, your cheek striped with grit and dew. Dawn's chill licks your neck cheek, still pressed to the quern's cold shoulder. A pinprick of light winks through distant trees, Maria's cottage nursing its lone candle. You rise, knees popping like green wood in a fire, and squint through sleep-crusted lashes. 17th century bakers often lit ovens before sunrise, using leftover embers to cheat the morning cold. Her shadow stretches across thin curtains, a puppeteer kneading dough without strings. The path to her cottage crunches underfoot, frosted grass resisting each step. Through a warped glass pane, you spy Maria's hands darting over flour-dusted boards. Her widow's cap tilts sideways, a crumpled dove nesting in silver hair. 18th century gossip claimed she baked ginger into communion bread just to watch priests sweat. You catch the scent of caraway seeds, or is it cardamom? Historians still argue whether spiced breads stemmed from luxury or hiding rancid flour. She slams the oven door, iron clangs scattering starlings from her thatch roof. Dough blisters, a chorus of tiny sighs escaping the cast iron beast. Your stomach growls loud enough to startle a field mouse nibbling rye crumbs. 12 generations of Marias lived here, each adding a brick to the sagging chimney. Her current loaves resemble cannonballs, dense enough to shatter a siege if launched proper. The candle gutters its smoke, staining the air with tallow and pine resin. Maria mutters to her yeast starter, pet name slurring into Baltic curse words. 13th century monks sold eternal balm, claiming it came from Galilee's last supper batch. She tosses salt over her shoulder. One grain strikes the window with a fairy's ping. You retreat before she spots you, boots slipping on moss-slicked cobblestones. 3 crows pace her gutter, heads cocked at the steaming chimney stack. A crust arcs through dawn's gray veil, Maria's hourly offering to whatever listens. One bird grabs it midair, black wings beating toward the mill's crooked silhouette. Back at the water wheel, you find half a loaf balanced on the broken quern. Raisins stud its crust like fossilized beetles, Maria's signature touch. Biting into it, you hit something hard. A rusty nail gleams in morning light, 17th century fertility charm, or baking mishap. You pocket it just as her cottage candle winks out. The mill's shadow stretches, long fingers brushing Maria's empty windowsill. Somewhere beyond the oaks, an oven creaks as it cools. Your jaw works the stubborn bread, chewing time into something softer. Pine resin hangs thick, its tang pricking your eyes as you near the tree line. Birch trunks lean like drunkards after last night's storm, roots clutching fistfuls of upturned soil. You pause where gravel fades to moss, 1 foot in civilization, the other teasing the wild. 14th century charcoal burners once hid here, their illegal hearths staining the oaks with echoes of smoke. A twig snaps, the forest exhales wet leaves and secrets. Your left boot sinks into loam, cold seep climbing your calf. The mill's heartbeat dims behind you, each thump of the water wheel softer vaguer. A woodpecker drills Morse code, 3 quick taps, then silence. Village tailies claim these trees swallowed a Flemish weaver whole in 1623. His loom still clacking on misty mornings. You spot initials carved into a beech, LR plus MS. Wounds wept over with amber sap. Historians still argue whether border forests were sanctuaries or just places to ditch unwanted bodies. Something glints in the leaf litter, a bottle shard green as envy. Kneeling, you wipe mud off its curve, a 1920s patent medicine vial. Dr. Hawk's electrified tonic bleeds through mildew, promising vigor, rectitude, 16-hour workdays. The jokes sour on your tongue. Your thumb brushes the rusty nail from Maria's loaf, 17th century placebo, still digging into your palm. Wind riffles the canopy, 1,000 pages turning at once. Shadows stitch themselves across your path, needles drawing phantom maps. You count 17 heartbeats, each slower, thicker, as if your blood remembers older rhythms. 3 mushrooms cluster at an elder tree's base, their caps red as cardinals' hats. Medieval tanners used that strain to dye lepers' shrouds, or so old Tomas swore between ales. The path narrows, thorns snagging your sleeve, impatient for a blood tithe. One berry bursts underfoot, purple guts smearing stone. You imagine goblin markets, troll tolls, the miller's apprentice who vanished here with a pocketful of rye. Your neck prickles, not fear, but the weight of eyes between birch scales. A squirrel chitters, its tail a question mark against lichen. Light shifts, filtered gold now, dawn elbowing through spruce teeth. You glimpse a cairn ahead, stones stacked by hands you'll never know. 16 pebbles in your pocket click like teeth as you bend to add another. The forest holds its breath, waiting to see if you'll tip the balance. 3 crows glide overhead, their wing beats syncing with the fading mill song. Your lungs hitch pine air too sharp, too clean for a dust-choked mill rat. A cough claws up, half laughter, half confession. You spit resinous phlegm onto a fern, its fronds recoil like offended nobles. 8 paces back, the path yawns wider. 30 steps forward, the cairn's shadow stretches, beckoning with stone fingers. The nail burns in your pocket, a compass needle heated red. You turn soul grinding that bury deeper into earth. The mill's pulse swells, water wheel groans, sawing through leaf hush. Maria's chimney coughs a smoke signal, one gray curl against bruised clouds. You retrace your steps, each footfall heavier, kneading the wild back into silence. Ferns uncurl behind you, erasing every treasonous inch you stole from the trees. Your boot sinks into dew-heavy grass, silver drops clinging to leather like liquid stars. The harvest moon swells, a ripe pumpkin balanced on the mill's roof. No shadows dare crawl tonight. The orange glare flattens the world into a single luminous page. 17th century farmers called this the thief's lantern, its glow letting them plunder fields until midnight. A wet crunch stops you, half-rotted apple under heel, its fermented guts smell like cider gone to war. The mill's walls hum wood, memorizing the river's endless gossip. You tilt your head, moonlight pours into your nostrils, cold metal tang on the tongue. Legends claim apples falling after dusk are compromises, earth releasing grudges to hungry soil. 3 more lie scattered near the well, their bruises glowing like St. Erasmus's lanterns. Historians still argue whether harvest moons truly fattened crops or just made drunk farmers think they did. Cold air nips your earlobe, a playful bite from autumn's teeth. You pocket a pebble from the well, its surface worn smooth by a century of wishes. Overhead, geese arrow south, their bellies stained orange by reflected light. Your spine tingles, that childhood myth about moon-burned skin peeling into prophecy scrolls. Cobwebs glisten between fence posts, fairy ladders abandoned before dawn's broom. The water wheel stutters, a caught rhythm, like a psalm singer forgetting lyrics. You kneel, fingers skimming the millpond's skin. The moon shatters into 1,000 carp scales, each flicker a vanished secret. 16th century millers supposedly bottled this light, selling it as lunar balm for withered crops. A fishmouth gulps at nothing, ripples erase your reflection's nose, then eyes, then scoffing lips. Leaves rustle behind you, no breeze to blame. You turn slow, knees popping like green wood. The fallen apple's core winks, seeds black as musket balls in its gaping belly. Someone once told you Polish brides buried fruit to test a suitor's loyalty. If worms came, the man was false. The joke curdles now, your breath frosting the air in shaky plumes. The mill's weather-vane squeals, rooster pivoting to face the forest's crouched shape. You count footsteps that aren't yours, 17 phantom creaks in the hayloft above. Warmth pricks your palm, the pebbles soaking up moonlight, or maybe your dread. 3 generations of millers died under harvest moons. Old Tomas swore it between gulps of beet vodka. An owl hoots, its call mimicked by someone's cupped hands. Your neck hairs rise, not from fear, but the sudden sense of being terribly, deliciously unalone. The river wind carries a note of burnt sugar, Maria's midnight baking, or a hallucination served cold. You press the pebble to your pulse point, counting 12 throbs before the apples start trembling. They roll toward the mill, a lazy procession, halted by the water wheel's slick spokes. One kisses the wood, leaves a smear of pulp, like a poorly written rune. The moon winks cloudless and smug, an unpaid servant watching you unravel. You stoop, grab the least rotten apple, its weight familiar as a priest's judgment. 2 bites in, juice ambushes your chin, the sweetness cut with a vinegar aftershock. It tastes like stolen things often do. Your throat constricts, memories of scrubbing flour, dust from the miller's best coat, fingernails stained for weeks. Above the stars dim, outshone by their bloated cousin, you spit seeds into your palm, 8 tiny coffins waiting for soil. The river sighs, louder now, its voice a wet match for the moon's glare. You kick an apple carcass, watch it bob in the froth, a miniature Viking funeral. A root cracks underground, maybe the mill's foundation shifting, maybe something digging its way up. Cold seeps through your soles. The earth here remembers every foot pressed too hard. Dawns a rumor on the horizon, pink threads fraying night's hem. You lick juice from your wrist, salt and iron beneath the sugar. 3 more apples drop in unison, their impacts punchlines to a joke you're too sleep stupid to get. The mill door groans, not invitation, but warning. You pocket the seeds, 8 chances to outgrow this orange-tinted trance. and drift inside before the moon demands applause. You kneel at the riverbank, cold mud seeping through worn trousers, the coins, edges biting crescent moons into your palm. Dawn's first blush stains the water pink, like wine spilled across a butcher's block. Roman soldiers once tossed sestertii into the Thames, bribing river gods for safe passage. Your 3 coppers feel flimsy, a child's ransom paid to the mill's liquid landlord. The nearest coin winks, red as a plague sore in the growing light. You flick it, watch it twirl. The river swallows the offering without a splash. Victorians swore dropping coins in the mill race cured warts. If you whispered the mayor's name backwards, your second payment follows. This one spins 3 times before vanishing. Historians still argue whether sacred rivers drowned more sinners or Cromwell's muskets. Something ripples upstream, a fish's spine breaking the surface, or a waterlogged finger. The final coin sticks to your sweat, protesting its fate, before plinking into the froth. 17th century Dutch traders believed rivers could hold grudges, marking debtors' skin with algae tattoos. Your reflection wavers, face smudged green by overhanging willows, lips sewn shut with mist. The water gurgles, a wet chuckle vibrating through nearby reeds. Frogs fall silent mid-croak, their balloon throats deflated by the sound. You lean closer. The stink of drowned roots fills your nose, milky sap and rot. Legend claims the mill's first owner traded his shadow here, got 7 fat harvests, then dissolved in a summer squall. A twig snaps behind you, but the crows don't startle. Your knees crack as you rise, river sludge oozing from your heels. 3 bubbles rise where the coins sank, perfect circles, too even for nature's clumsy hand. Medieval nuns wrote of water imps shaping foam into Latin curses, the bubbles popping with heretical whispers. Wind ruffles the shallows, the river's breath smells like wet flour, and something older, birch leaves swirl into a spiral dancing clockwise, despite the eastern breeze. You count 17 rotations before they scatter, too precise, too intentional. The mill's shadow stretches, a black tongue licking your boots, a kingfisher dives, its blue blaze slicing the water, emerging empty-taloned. The birds here learn hunger young. Your stomach growls, last night's apple vinegar still clawing your throat. You remember the widow Maria's warning, water spirits charge interest on late payments. But you were 12 coins short in June. The river sighs, a sound like sodden parchment tearing. Ripples race toward the opposite bank, forming ridges that mimic the mill's roof tiles. You step back, heel squelching, as the pattern shifts into letters, or maybe runes. Someone chuckles again, deeper now, vibrating up through your molars. Sunlight crests the mill, burning away the last mist curtains. The water stills your warped reflection, wearing a stranger's weary grin. 3 mushrooms sprout where your knees dented the mud, capless stems oozing amber beads. You snap one off. Its sap smells like the miller's cough syrup, honey, and hopelessness. A fish leaps, silver body bent mid-arc, before vanishing with unnatural speed. Something about the angle feels mocking, a aquatic cartwheel just for you. The river's chuckle fades, replaced by the creak of the mill's waking mechanisms. You shiver, your shadow finally detaching from the bank, stretching westward, reluctant. As you turn toward the smell of burning rye, the wool scratches your neck coarse as a miller's palm. Yet heat blooms beneath its bristling weave. Stars smear overhead, their pinprick light dulled by the loft's single cracked window. Medieval Flemish traders taxed blankets by thread count. This relic would have bankrupted a duke. You huddle deeper, the stink of lanolin and generations of sweat clinging to the fibers. Someone's initials, JT, are embroidered near the hem, stitches crooked, a drunkard's dedication. Your breath fogs the air, each exhale a ghost, rehearsing its exit. 17th century sailors swore woolen throws could map constellations. If you slept drunk on barley wine, the weave's pattern does resemble stars tonight, or maybe just moth holes. A mouse scritches below, its tiny claws syncopating with the water wheel's groan. Historians still argue whether peasants stuffed blankets with mint for fleas or sweet dreams. The loft creaks, its rafters contracting like arthritic bones. You count 12 heartbeats before the noise stops, an old carpenter's trick for avoiding night terrors. Moonlight bleeds through the window, slicing the dust motes into floating coins. Your eyelids sag. The wool's grip feels softer now, or your skin's gone numb. A cowbell clangs in the distance, its brassy tongue tolling 3 times. The widow's heifer's been restless since the equinox, or so claims old Tomas. You wonder if he stole this blanket. Barn smells cling to its folds. But the thought dissolves like sugar in cold tea. Renaissance laundresses used urine to brighten wool. You sniff cautiously, regret it. Wind prowls the eaves. A draft sneaks under the blanket's edge. You curl tighter, knees pressing into that tender spot below your ribs. The mill's heartbeat thrums through the floorboards. Water wheels pulse, slowing as the river drowsies. Your last conscious thought tastes of rye bread, burnt crusts, and yesterday's regrets. Stars spin, their dance lazily elliptic, the blanket an anchor in the tide. Somewhere a goose honks, indignant, as sleep drags you underground to flower-fine dust. Nights gnaw the day's edges now, each dusk arriving quicker, hungrier. You measure time by the miller's shuffling, his boot scrape, echoing through floorboards like a rusty saw. 17th century healers prescribed powdered pearls for lung rot, rich men's hubris dissolved in wine. His cough hacks through the wall. A wet bellows wheeze. You count 7 before the fit ebbs. Autumn air bites sharper tonight. It slicks your throat raw as unbaked dough. You press an ear to cold stone, tracking his movements from hearth to bed. Historians still argue whether chalk rot in millers came from grain dust or breathing too much river damp. His steps falter wood creaks, a long silence pools, until the bedframe protests. The rivers kept your 3 coins. Its chuckle now sounds colder mocking. You'd bargained for gentle winters once, before frost silvered the miller's beard. Moonlight etches cracks in the ceiling plaster, a spiderweb of crumbling futures. Farmers used to tally midnight coughs, an almanac of sickness predicting next year's harvest. You've reached 43 tonight. The number tastes like burnt oat porridge. Dawn prowls the horizon, pink claws tearing at night's underbelly. His door winds open. A shadow drags itself toward the millstones. You mimic sleep, eyelids fluttering fake dreams, as his wheeze skitters over your blanket. Dutch physicians once diagnosed Miller's melancholy, a madness blamed on flower-choked air. His hand brushes your shoulder brief as a moth's landing before retreating downstairs. The hearth exhales ash, its warmth thinning with each passing hour. You count 12 coughs between sunrise and porridge, 11 fewer than yesterday's toll. Reddish phlegm dots his handkerchief. He tucks it quick, but not quick enough. Archaeologists found medieval millstones, pocked WITH Chinese letter carvings, warding symbols against lung demons. You stir honey into his bowl extra, like bribing a stubborn gear to turn. Midday light bleaches the yard, yet frost still clings to the well bucket. His laugh cracks during lunch, a sound like kindling snapping under boot. Tudor millers wore linen masks dipped in vinegar, a sting better than drowning in dust. You swipe flour from his sleeve. The gesture feels like burying someone alive. Sunset arrives ruthless, early, plunging the mill into gloom before supper's cleared. His coughing fit bends him double hands, clawing the table's edge for balance. You pretend not to see, polishing the same spoon until your thumb throbs. Some say night air spread the white plague, others blamed bread blessed by fallen priests. The unspoken truth hangs between you, thicker than flour suspended in draft light. First, stars emerge pitiless as he whispers instructions for tomorrow's grind. You memorize the rasp, how his vowels fray like old rope. His bed frame creaks its nightly dirge. You count the breaths between coughs, 36, a reprieve. The river growls beyond the wall, its promised coins glinting somewhere in the mud. Sleep comes thin as parchment, your dreams plagued by silent mills, motionless wheels. His shadow lingers at dawn, watching you knead dough, his approval warm as a deathbed candle. You let the loaf overproof, blaming the yeast as his next cough rattles the jars. Morning frost paints the mill's roof white, a shroud melting under weak sunlight. Roosters pierce the muffling fog, their cries dulled by stone walls stuffed with sheep's wool, as if screaming through a pillow. Your toes curl against flagstones, still holding nights chill like a grudge. Tudor farmhands swore dawn's first cockcrow silenced prowling ghosts, though a Sussex village once sewed tiny felt socks on roosters to hush their infernal racket. You press a palm to the wall, counting heartbeats, until the miller's answering shuffle. Light bleeds through chinks, in the mortar, liquid gold pooling around your knees. The world isn't awake yet, not truly, just stretching beneath thin linen sheets of mist. Historians still argue whether medieval bakers rose early to catch angelic yeast, or because hungry guilds find late starters. Downstairs, the millstone groans, joints protesting like an old dog forced to heel. You trace a thumb over yesterday's flour burn, the blister shaped like Corsica, or maybe a squashed hedgehog. Cool air nips your throat as you descend each step, memorizing the groan of third stair, 7th, 11th. The miller stands haloed in windowlight, face gaunt as a communion wafer, hands sifting grain with monastic precision. 17th century monasteries timed matins by how long a sack of rye took to grind, the original snooze button. A cough rips free, his shoulders hunching, as you wordlessly slide honeyed nettle tea across the worktable. Sunlight hits the water wheel, its paddles slapping the stream like a drowsy parent patting a fussing child. You scatter oats for the chickens, their claws scratching hieroglyphs only worms decipher. Scholars recently found a Roman scroll claiming roosters crowed precisely 1,872 times daily, which explains why everyone back then died by 30. The miller's gaze follows you, a weight softer than flour, harder than stone. Dew soaks through your socks as you check the sluice gate, fingers clumsy on iron levers green with patina. Buyer smells drift from neighboring farms, manure and milk, the countryside's perfume. Your 3 coins glint in the shallows, the river's gift reduced to algae-flecked coppers. A kingfisher darts past, its turquoise streak as brief as that time Tomas tried brewing mead in a butter churn. Chickens erupt in squawking panic. Something moves in the woodpile. You wield a broom like a drunken jouster, only to find the tabby smugly cleaning her whiskers. The miller wheezes a laugh, a sound so rare you freeze mid-swing, bristles hovering above the cat's unimpressed head. Tudor wives believed cats stole baby's breath, though pockets their ridiculous name. Only steals sausages and dignity. Heat swells as the day aged, flies droning lazy orbits around the cooling hearth. You sweep flour dust into shapes, a lopsided horse, a mushroom, a passable likeness of the vicar's terrible wig. The miller's cough naps fitfully, a fanged beast you both pretend isn't coiled beneath the table. Shadows stretch, gaunt puppets tethered to the sinking sun, as you knead dough already studded with twilight. Town clocks bicker across the valley, each declaring an hour, 15 minutes apart. Your spine cracks as you heft the proofing bowl, bourbon biscuits for the miller's sweet tooth. Crusaders carried aniseed cakes as field rations. One knight's journal complained they taste like victory and regret. Stars emerge timid at first, then swaggering across the sky like drunkards leaving a tavern. You promise yourself 1 hour of rest, just one before tomorrow's grind. The miller's lamp gutters, its death rattle drowned out by the river's endless gossip. Darkness swallows the final cough of the day, a damp sound forgotten before it hits the floor. The flour sack molds to your skull, still warm from yeast's secret labor, its burlap weave scratching like a lover's stubble. Grain dust swirls in your nostrils, summer meadows, and stone grit mixing with the mill's perpetual sweat of wood and iron. You once read that Egyptian pharaohs stuffed cedar shavings in their pillows to ward off bedbugs. A flex only kings could afford. Your own pillow smells of work, and a mouse nest's worth of oats smuggled by midnight rodents. Moonlight slithers through the hayloft's cracks, painting stripes across your eyelids. The miller's cough echoes below. Fourth stifled hack. Tonight, a grim countdown you tally on calloused fingers. Historians still argue whether medieval apprentices slept in mills to guard grain, or because masters charged rent for actual beds. A black moth lands on your wrist, its wings powdered like a baker's ghost, before flitting toward the rafters. You drift, not quite awake, not yet asleep, as the cat's purr vibrates through the floorboards. Someone hung rosemary above the flour bins. Crushed needles litter your pillow, their pine-sharp sting fighting the fog in your skull. Tudor apothecaries swore rosemary beneath the bed cured nightmares, though you're pretty sure Mistress Hale just hated moths. The air thickens, sweet rot of overripe apples, burnt sugar, a hint of lanolin from sheared wool. Dreams come slyly, no fanfare, just a slow bleed of images. You're sifting flour through a colander, except the grains are stars, burning cold against your palms. The miller appears younger, face unlined, chasing a piglet wearing the vicar's powdered wig. A shadow detaches from the rafters. The tabby, her green eyes, now owl yellow, wings rustling like parchment. She perches on the millstone, which grinds not wheat, but teeth, tiny and white as milk teeth. Someone whispers in the language of creaking beams, the timbers answering with a groan you feel in your molars. A hot breeze stirs, though the night hangs breathless, carrying the greasy smoke of a blacksmith's forge. 17th century court records mention a Devon smith accused of shoeing nightmares, nailing iron to hooves that kicked men's souls loose. Your fingers clutch the flour sack, splintery burlap, keeping you moored to the waking world, or what's left of it. The owlcat spreads her wings, each feather tipped in flour, and the dream shifts. You're knee-deep in the river coins glinting like fish scales, the current pulling at your bruised shins. Tomas materializes, beard dripping algae, offering a loaf studded with beetles instead of raisins. Eat, he croaks, but when you bite down, it's gingerbread, spiced and chewy, his laughter curdling into the miller's wet cough. You jerk awake, sort of legs tangled in rough-spun blankets, the cat's paw batting your earlobe. Dawn's first guillotine sliver of light cuts the eastern fields. 3 crows peck at something shiny in the yard, maybe your river coins, maybe the owlcat's lost feathers. Your tongue feels woolen, mouth stuffed with the aftertaste of burnt honey, though the hearth died hours ago. Sleep drags you under again, this time without dreams, just the muffled metronome of the water wheel's endless chant. The flour sack pillow breathes beneath you, inhaling your sweat, exhaling the ghosts of 10,000 harvested summers. You dissolve into grain ground fine, blown toward fields where the horizon bleeds into sky, and the miller's cough fades to a distant drizzle. The water wheel groans, a dying animal's protest, as you pour oil over its rusted hinges. Iron flakes cling to your knuckles, blood bright in the dawn's thin light. Centuries back, olden engineers used olive oil to quiet siege engines, a trick millers stole between wars. Your own grease pot reeks of rendered sheep fat. Mistress hails discount solution, its stench clinging like onion smoke. You press an ear to the axle wood splinters, catching your sleeve. The rhythm's uneven, kerthunk silence, kerthud, as if the wheel forgets its purpose between turns. Tomas once swore greasing the mechanism with butter-pleased river spirits, though you've only seen it attract rats. A droplet falls, black as squid ink, splattering your boot. 17 paces upstream, a kingfisher dives, stealing minnows from the wheel's sluggish embrace. Blister grease bubbles between your fingers, slick and vaguely medicinal. Historians still argue whether flour mills ran smoother with animal fat or linseed, a debate as endless as the river. You imagine scribes brawling over parchment scrolls, quills snapped like chicken bones. The cat rubs against your shin, leaving flour prints on your breeches, her tail flicking at the stink. The crank shrieks, then stills as your oil works into the joints. For 3 breaths, silence hangs pregnant before the wheel lurches into motion. Water slaps the paddles cleaner now each rotation, exhaling a metallic sigh. You count the olden rhythms, the mill's pulse syncing with your own tired heartbeat. 18 turns, 19, 20, until the squeal fades to a hum. A sugar cube of lard remains gleaming in its tin. You lob it into the shallows, where catfish might mistake it for a pale insect. Some claim eels in this river grow 3 meters long, slithering through mud since the Romans left. The water offers no proof, just your reflection rippling like melted wax. Noon heat warps the air, turning the mill's shadow into a puddle. You lean against sun-warmed stone, the wheel's new song almost melodic. Cobwebs tremble in its draft, ghostly lutes strummed by invisible fingers. Even machines need kindness, or at least the illusion of it, to keep pretending they're alive. The cat leaps onto the mechanism, balancing on a paddle, her fur ruffled by spray. For a heartbeat, she's a figurehead on some creaking ship, sailing nowhere. Then she's gone, vanishing into barley fields, leaving you alone with the river's ancient gossip. You lick grease from your thumb, taste iron and juniper, and wonder if Roman engineers ever gagged on their solutions. The wheel spins, steady at last, its voice now a drowsy murmur. Water glides beneath it, smooth as old parchment, carrying the day's labor downstream. A flour sack tears as you shift, spilling grains that glitter like stolen coins. Your fingertip catches on splinters, the support beam's hidden patch of smoothness beneath decades of grime. You scrub with a damp sleeve, revealing letters carved deep. WLHELM 1623, edges softened by generations of touching. 3 names down, Anya gone, Lot, their ages etched beside them. 17, 19, 22. Mill hands from plague years' wars, harvests lost to locust clouds. Historians know apprentice marks, doubled as death records, when tombstones cost a month's flour. The click of your lantern shifts shadows, exposing crude faces scratched between names, smiling despite the rot. Dust coats your tongue chalky and sweet as you blow across the beam. More symbols emerge, a horned rabbit, a 6-fingered hand. Olden millers believed such carvings warded off grain mites, though you've still seen weevils partying in the rye. Your nail traces a looping M, the same mark burned into your apprenticeship papers last spring. The cat leaps onto the beam, her paw print obliterating poor Tom drowned 1711. You rescue the name with a spit-dampened thumb, reconstructing the T from memory. Some say mill ghosts snuff lights if their marks fade, a myth your dying lantern takes very seriously. 3 quick breaths relight the wick, scenting the air with burnt pork fat. Across the beam, a cluster of Norse runes hides beneath cross-hatched tallies. Experts think Viking traders built the first mill here, though the only proof is a rusted axe head in the village museum. Your pinky brushes angular glyphs, their meaning lost, until moonlight hits them just so. Harvest, flood, lie, or maybe ducks. Runes weren't big on clarity. You crouch finding knee-level carvings, Clara, Meg, little Tom, children's script wobbly as drunk hens. 16th century court records mention mill girls crushed under grindstones, their wages halved for being slow with sums. The beam's lowest groove holds a hairpin, green with age, its jade stem cold as glacier ice. Fingertips graze your own name, fresh cut beside the miller's shaky MH mistress. Hale's signature looks like a sick crow tried cursive. You add a tiny dagger just for flair, its blade pointing toward the cat's smudged paw. Historians still argue whether apprentice marks were signatures, warnings, or love letters to the mill itself. The beam creaks, your daggers tip already collecting dusk motes. Wind sneaks through cracks, scattering flour over the carvings. Names blur, become a river of ghosts, their stories ground finer than spelt. You press your palm to the beam, splinters biting flesh, and swear the wood hums. 15 generations of sweat and chaff traded for calluses and a place to sleep. The cat bats at your hair, her bell jingling, then pounces on a moth near Elia's. 1599. You watch them dance, wing and claw, until both vanish up the ladder. Left alone, you lick flour from your teeth, taste oak sap and iron nails, and 100 whispered secrets. Moonlight shifts, the carvings now just shadows, leaving you wondering if the mill remembers. or simply forgets slower than we do. The candle's flame gutters, a drowning sailor clutching at wave-smoothed wood. Wax creeps toward the saucer's edge, congealing into translucent cliffs. You tilt the holder buying time, but physics always wins. 17th century apprentices burned tallow candles like this one, stinking of boiled hog fat, because beeswax cost a year's wages. At least your nose isn't haunted by rendering vats tonight. Shadows colonize the hearthstones, retreating when embers exhale. You kneel, palm hovering over ash, feeling the mill's pulse. Some medieval households buried horse skulls under their fireplaces to amplify heat. You whisper the rumor to the soot-stained bricks. They don't confirm. The cat watches from her flour sack thrown tail, flicking like a metronome stuck between allegro and why bother. Your breath puffs a coal back to life, orange veins threading through black. Fire was currency here once, every spark guarded like guild secrets. Historians still argue whether blackened hearth symbols were makers' marks, protective sigils, or bored children with pokers. You trace a spiral, its grooves matte against the gloss of centuries. The candle surrenders, wick collapsing into molten wax with a wet sigh. Darkness pours through the mill, pooling in hollows left by missing floorboards. Only ember glow remains, a dozen tiny suns hiding in ash. You recall that odd merchant last winter claimed Cossack warriors slept on heated stoves to cure melancholia. The miller banned him after finding turnips missing. Cold nips your ankles, blade sharp, as you grop for the tinderbox. Flint strikes steel once, twice, teasing a spark onto charred cloth. 3 breaths nurse it to flame, the new candle's smoke curling into a question mark. Some believed dying candle fumes carried messages to the dead, though yours just smells like singed thumbnail. The cat materializes, her bell jingling, batting at the saucer. You rescue it, fingertips branded with hot wax. Hazard pay, you mutter. She responds by licking a paw with judicial slowness. 1723 parish records mention a miller's cat listed as senior rodent control officer, probably this one's thrice great-grandmother. Wind shoulders through the door, scattering ledger pages. Embers flare, illuminating master hails, looping script, 3 bushels rye, a deducted for mouse damage. You huff, flicking a weevil off the parchment. His quill strokes dig deeper when deducting wages, like he's carving justice into vellum. The cat pounces on the weevil, an execution witnessed solely by a cobweb. Moonlight slinks through cracks, turning flower dust to falling stars. You slump against the hearth, its warmth kneading your shoulders. Early millers often slept here, their dreams marinated in smoke and the yeasty tang of rising dough. The cat claims your lap, a move calculated to exploit human weakness. Her purr syncs with the embers. Crackle, a lullaby older than brick. One coal glows brighter, a last soldier holding the gate. You imagine faces in its pulsating core, smiling ancestors, frowning guild inspectors, That baker who overpaid for spelt last Tuesday. Reality's edges soften, ash transforming into snow, flame into street lamp, mill into a dim metro station. Sleep hooks your ribs, dragging you toward the void, until the cat's claws prick your thigh, her version of an alarm clock. Embers have dimmed to asterisks, punctuating the dark. You blow on them, rewarded with a single red eye glaring back. Tudor law required hearth fires to burn from All Hallows Eve till Beltane penalty. 10 shillings or 10 lashes. You take the lashes, less paperwork. Dawn's first bird brays a rusty note. The candle drowns its wick final tendril of smoke twisting like a hanged man's jig. Cold stakes its claim, creeping up your sleeves, nesting in your lungs. But the hearth's breath lingers, a phantom warmth kissing your forehead. You close your eyes, and the mill hums its oldest song. Limbs sink into scratchy linen, the weight of kneaded bread left to proof. River murmurs seep through the wall, water wheels groan, now a distant rocking chair squeak. Your fingers unclench, releasing grain dust ghosts into the dark. Medieval millers slept with scythes under their straw ticks, not for protection, but to harvest dreams before dawn. You'd rather risk nightmares than stab yourself mid-snore. Moonlight bleeds through shuttered windows, painting the sacks around you as headstones. A weevil trundles across your wrist, its pilgrimage toward the promised land of forgotten crumbs. Historians still argue whether Roman-era bakers introduced pests to Britain, or if weevils boarded Viking longships as stowaways. You blow it gently into oblivion, the first benevolent deity this beetle's ever known. Cool air pools in your left ear, right ear mashed against flower-stuffed canvas. 19th century sleep manuals warned against lopsided slumber, claimed it caused moral crookedness. You shift, but the sack's indentation holds your skull like a jealous lover. The cat's whiskers brush your ankle, her nocturnal shift beginning as yours crumbles. Memories dissolve into half-dreams. The miller's cough becomes blacksmith hammers. Chill drafts transform into spectral breaths. Some claim old mills stockpile echoes, every gristly argument and stolen kiss between stones. Your own secrets join the stash, the apple stolen from Widow Maria's tree, the coin kept when the scale tipped. Dawn flexes its pink knuckles beyond the hills. River song blurs into a woman's hum low and resonant as a cello's C-string. Tudor nurses sang drowning ballads to orphans, their cadence matching drowning mills. Skin prickles not from cold, but the sense of fingers combing your hair. A rooster's cry shreds the veil, but sleep's glue binds your lids. 18th century Londoners paid tuppence for miller's naps. 10-minute cellar snoozes believed to cure gout. You're working pro bono, tax paid in stiff necks and mouse-dropping pillows. The cat's purr sinks with imaginary loom shuttles, weaving your breath into the mill's tapestry. Wind shoulders through a cracked pane, tossing chaff into fleeting constellations. You hover between floors, now body anchored to grit-strewn planks, spirit eddying like mote-lit dust. Sleepologists. Yes, that's a real title. Found mill hands dozed deeper than kings, their exhaustion a crash pad for the mind. The last coherent thought flickers, a memory of childhood bells tolling through summer haze. Then the river pulls you under, not toward rapids, but into its silt-soft belly. Dreams roll you smooth, pebble tumbling through eons, until dawn's sieve strains night from sky. Limbs melt into coarse linen, the heaviness of dough rising slow. River whispers seep through cracks, the water wheels creak, now a faint rocker's sigh. Fingers unfurl, freeing specks of flour that vanish like ghosts. Old millers once slept with blades beneath their beds, not for danger, but to gather dreams at first light. You choose shadows over a sharp surprise any night. Moon paints woven sacks as tombstones, pale through shuttered beams. A tiny beetle marches up your arm, its quest for crumbs you scattered away. Did Roman bake shops bring pests to these lands, or did they sail with Norse ships long past? Your breath sends it drifting, a mercy it won't forget. Coolness gathers in one ear, the other pressed to flowery cloth. Sleep guides once preached crooked rest, makes crooked souls. You turn, but the sack cradles your head like a stubborn embrace. A cat's touch grazes your ankle, her night begins as yours dissolves. Memory blurs into half-sleep, coughs morph to hammer strikes. Cold drafts turn to ghostly sighs. Mills hoard echoes, they say, every shout and stolen kiss between stones. Your confessions join them, the snatched apple, the extra coin kept silent. Dawn stretches peach fingers over distant hills. The river's song softens to a mother's hum deep as cello strings. Nurses once lulled orphans with water's rhythm, their tunes matching creaking wheels. You shiver not from chill, but phantom fingers through your hair. A rooster pierces the dark, yet sleep's grip holds firm. Long ago, city folk paid pennies for quick naps in cellars, said it healed old aches. You rest unpaid your fee in stiff pillows and dust. The cat's rumble weaves with make-believe looms, threading your breath into the mill story. Wind slips through broken glass, lifting husks to dance like stars. You drift between realms, now flesh on rough wood, spirit swirling with moonlit motes. Experts found weary millers sleep sounder than crowns, their tiredness a cushion for the soul. Your last clear thought glimmers, a chime from youth's warm haze. Then the current claims you not to churn, but to its soft, muddy depths. Dreams polish you smooth, stone-kissed by time, until morning's light sieves dark from day.